People who drafted Dallas's offensive players in best ball this season have been disappointed so far. Despite outscoring their opponents 124-41, only 38% of Dallas's touchdowns have come from the offense. And the Cowboys offense has scored 8 total touchdowns. And here's that list. For rushing touchdowns, as Tony Pollard has 2, Hunter Lipke has 1, Devontae Turpin has 1. For receiving touchdowns, CeeDee Lamb scored 1, Jake Ferguson scored 1, Rico Dowdle scored 1, and Luke Schoonmaker scored 1 touchdown. So it's been a who's list of scrubs so far scoring touchdowns for the Dallas offense. And meanwhile, just about all of San Francisco's weapons have been feasting on fantasy points. San Francisco has also dominated their opponents, outscoring them 125-58. So it's a pretty equal comparison in how much these two teams have outscored their opponents. Katie Drummond broke down a DVOA comparison for USA Today. When you compare teams, both are top 5 in overall offensive DVOA, with Dallas ranked 5th, while San Francisco is ranked 2nd overall. That's because in offensive DVOA, Dallas is ranked 16th versus the 49ers, who are ranked 2nd. Dallas is ahead of San Francisco in defensive DVOA, 3rd place versus 7th place overall. But what's been killing Dallas on offense is their inability to convert in the red zone. And Dallas has the most red zone possessions per game, yet ranked 30th in touchdown conversion rate. That's stats from Evan Silva over at Establish the Run. And they are a team capable of moving the ball, but they're incapable of scoring so far this season. And tonight they have a dangerous opponent. Dallas is allowing more explosive plays, but are also forcing more turnovers as far as their defense goes. And San Francisco's offense is capable of generating explosive plays, as they've generated more explosive plays, but Brock Purdy struggles under pressure. So Dallas's best player is CeeDee Lamb, who runs most of his routes from the slot, where San Francisco has been allowing 6th most Draftkings points per game, right underneath the Eagles, who we've been targeting all year in the slot. So the $1 million question tonight is, will Dallas's red zone luck turn tonight for San Francisco, or will it continue to be unlucky? Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Simon Edwards at PumaCom with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. And on tonight's show, we're going to be taking a look at the matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to be building some lineups for Draftkings Showdown. And before we get into any of that, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And you're going to want to subscribe. We hit another captain in this morning's London game. Travis Etienne just crushed that game, and he ended up being the captain, and that was the call of the day for our captain plays on that show today. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do these for every single showdown slate, and I'm going to be, bringing guests on every once in a while too to break down slates with, like I had Spread this morning, and we nailed the game script on the Jacksonville game. Just had a few too many kickers and tight ends, and not enough of Deontay Hardy in our lineups. But that's this morning. Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at this Dallas game. So let's get into that. This is an interesting game. I was coming into it expecting to be heavy on San Francisco, but after reading that USA Today article, I got more and more onto Dallas. And after building a few lineups in the optimizer, running an optimizer with just basic projections, it looked like it was coming out heavily on the San Francisco side. Give you a breakdown of what that game stack summary looks like. San Francisco 4-player offensive stacks are coming in at 56%, and San Francisco 3-player stacks are coming in at 23%. So the overwhelming majority of these lineups, 20% of these stacks are coming in 5-1 San Francisco. So the overwhelming majority of these builds are coming in heavy San Francisco. And after reading that article and finding, just a lot of the bad luck that Dallas has been having, I was expecting to see year over year Dallas a significantly worse team than they were last year. They lost Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. We're stuck with Mike McCarthy calling plays. If you're a fantasy owner, you're cursing out his name right now from their lack of production in the offense. But as it turns out, they're just as efficient as they were last year. Meanwhile, San Francisco, who lost DeMeco Ryan to the Houston Texans, has significantly worsened as their defensive DVOA, despite the team that we see dominating opponents week in and week out. They're still tremendous defense, and they're definitely dominating their opponents, but it leaves us room to question the narrative that the San Francisco 49ers have the most dominating defense in the league. And now they get an opponent in Dallas, which, as we've seen in the past, has been capable of putting up points. And Dallas kind of is in a prove it game tonight. They got to prove that they're still a good team, and they're playing in San Francisco, so they got a disadvantage there. But there is room to question the narrative of will San Francisco dominate this game tonight, which is all we need to build lineups that are going to compete with 80% of the field or 20% of the field instead of 80% of the field. So let's take a look at some of these players here. Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey has been outstanding this season. We can see it in his game log. 51.7 points last week, 22.9 points the week before, 25.5 points in week 2, and 28.9 points in week 1. So Christian McCaffrey has been doing outstanding this year. He's a guy that you definitely want in your player pool, and you probably, comes about as close to a lock, at least in flex, as you can get. We saw earlier today the advantage of fading one of these skill position players when we faded Stephon Diggs. And despite Diggs scoring 25 points, Diggs did not end up in the optimal lineup because it was a shootout situation, and he just got outscored by cheaper players. So there is advantages sometimes to fading these players like this, but I don't see another player on this list who I would prefer over Christian McCaffrey as far as upside. So I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to fade Christian McCaffrey in this build today that we're going to do. Tony Pollard has been sluggish this season. He has, looks like no receiving touchdowns, but he scored 2 rushing touchdowns, and he scored those 2 touchdowns in week 1 versus the Giants. So he hasn't done anything since week 1 from a touchdown perspective, but he's had fantasy points of 9 points, 18 points, 19.9 points, and 22.2 points. So Tony Pollard has had, a decent output, but tonight he gets a tough matchup, and San Francisco is allowing 18 points per game to running back. So it's not horrible. They've been allowing a lot more in the receiving game to running backs than they have in the actual run game. So Tony Pollard is definitely interesting. As far as Christian McCaffrey's matchup, Dallas has only been allowing 13 fantasy points to game for running back. So that gives us a little bit more, thinking before we lock him in the flex spot. He's going to have a difficult time against Dallas. There is one thing going for Christian McCaffrey, other than, obviously him being a great player. He is going for Emmitt Smith's consecutive touchdown streak right now. He's at 13. Christian McCaffrey's at 13. Emmitt Smith's record is 14. So Christian McCaffrey needs to score a touchdown tonight to continue that streak to 14 games, which is all the more reason as if you needed to play Christian McCaffrey tonight. Christian McCaffrey and the captain, though, knowing how difficult Dallas's run D is, that's gonna you're gonna have to think twice about putting him maybe in the captain tonight, even though he's got the most upside on the slate. CeeDee Lamb has not really been good this season. He had 14.8 points last week, 10.2 points the week before, 28.3 the week before that. That was his biggest week. And then week 1, he had 11.7 points. Funny that CeeDee Lamb had his biggest week against the Jets defense, who's one of the best defenses in the league. And now we get to put CeeDee Lamb up against San Francisco's slot defense, and their slot defense is allowing 25.8 points per game. Draftkings points per game puts them right underneath the Eagles. And the Eagles are a team that we've been targeting every week in the slot. And so that makes CeeDee Lamb interesting. And CeeDee Lamb has depressed ownership just based on everybody wanting to put Christian McCaffrey in the captain, and then just Dallas in general is under-owned versus the 49ers tonight. So that makes CeeDee Lamb very interesting tonight, and interesting in a captain perspective. Dak Prescott, he's kind of a mediocre quarterback. This year he's been, just completely mediocre. As we were talking about at the beginning of the show, he has had trouble converting in the red zone. That could be, due to play calling. We got Mike McCarthy and Schottenheimer are calling plays, or Mike McCarthy's calling plays, but Schottenheimer's the OC. And that is a huge downgrade over Kellen Moore, who's tearing things up with the Chargers this season. So a lot of the offensive difficulties that Dallas has been facing so far this season could be explained by the play calling, but they've been able to move the ball between the 20s, and they just stall when they get in the red zone. They haven't been able to convert. So that's the question. Are they going to be able to convert tonight versus San Francisco? We know that San Francisco has a tough defense, but, like any given Sunday, and, we never know when Dallas is going to regress to the positive on converting some of those red zone opportunities. Brock Purdy struggles under pressure, and he's facing a very difficult matchup tonight with, Dallas's defense. From a quarterback point perspective, Dallas is only allowing 10 points a game to quarterbacks. They haven't really faced a huge, difficult schedule so far this season, but they're allowing 10 points a game to the quarterback position. And going back to Dak, San Francisco is allowing 15 points a game to the quarterback position. So they both have very difficult matchups from a quarterback perspective. This might be one of those nights where we fade quarterback altogether. So we'll take a look at that when we get into building lineups. Brandon Ayuk is having a great season so far this year. He scored 23.8 points last week, 7.3 points the week before that, and 35.9 points in week 1. So Brandon Ayuk has been having a great season so far. He's becoming the beast that we were hoping that he would become last year. He's breaking out this year and having a big year. So he's looking good. And he's got a good quarterback with him too, and Brock Purdy, who knows how to get him the ball. So it's a good combination there. Deebo Samuel is having a pretty decent year. He got only 0.6 fantasy points last week, coming off of an injury. 28 the week before that, 22 in week 2, and 11 in week 1. So Deebo Samuel, he's been a little bit up and down, but Deebo Samuel's got the skill set to overcome any of that. And in the coverage that was done by the Dallas side last year when they faced off in the playoffs let's see how many points that they had with San Francisco side. Deebo Samuel had 4 rushing attempts for 11 yards. He got 7 targets, 4 receptions for 45 yards. Last season, looks like Ayuk was not in. He was in that game. He had 4 targets, 2 receptions for 26 yards. So the matchup tonight might benefit Deebo Samuel if you're looking to pick between those receivers based on last year's performance. But we'll dig more into that and see how they fit overall into our lineups today. George Kittle. George Kittle has had a down season this year. 4.9 points in week 1, 6 points week 2, 16 points in week 3, but 1.9 points in week 1. So George Kittle really hasn't done much of anything this year, and he's got a pretty difficult matchup tonight versus Dallas, who's only allowing 9 points a game to the tight end position. So not looking very good for George Kittle in tonight's matchup, but he did have 95 yards against them in last year's playoff game. So now we go past the scrubs. We get to Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has a good matchup. San Francisco is vulnerable to outside receivers, but he's not the Dallas outside receiver that I'm interested in. Cooks got 4 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets, and hasn't scored over 7 fantasy points. So Brandon Cooks, you can definitely make a case for him, breaking out tonight with this matchup. But I'm going to be looking more towards Michael Gallup. And Michael Gallup has been getting targeted 6 targets last week, 7 the week before, 2 and 2. And Michael Gallup has a good relationship. He's got a good rapport with Dak Prescott. We've seen it in the past. Michael Gallup always comes out of nowhere when the attention's on everybody else, and he has these big games in prime time. And I think tonight is going to be one of those nights. Michael Gallup has equally good matchup to Brandon Cooks tonight, and I think that Michael Gallup is definitely interesting in tonight's matchup, and he has the best DVOA matchup of the group too. On top of it, where he aligns on the left side of the field the most. So I like Michael Gallup in tonight's matchup. Jake Ferguson is interesting tonight. Just from a target perspective, he's got 7 targets 3 times this season. I think he's the most heavily targeted guy on out of all tight ends in the red zone too. He's even more targeted or equally targeted to Travis Kelce. So Jake Ferguson has been having a good season so far. He had 14.7 points last week, almost 10 fantasy points a week before that, 10 before the week before that, and then 3 in week 1. Very good numbers for a tight end, and it makes Jake Ferguson interesting tonight, even though he is in a bad matchup. But we'll see what happens when we're building lineups and where the salary takes us tonight. But Jake Ferguson's interesting. I like both kickers tonight because we're talking about 2 good defenses, and we're talking about Dallas, who is stalled in the red zone despite being able to move the ball into the red zone. And that sets up Aubrey to have a big game tonight. Aubrey, so far this year, has not scored under 10 fantasy points. He had 12 last week. He had 11 the week before, 18 fantasy points against the Jets, and 10 fantasy points in week 1. So if we're comparing him, maybe San Francisco's defense, the most difficult defense that they faced so far was the Jets, and Aubrey put up 18 points against the Jets, which makes him very interesting tonight. And let's look at Moody's numbers. Moody has 5 fantasy points last week, but then he got 12, 14, 14. So both of these kickers are, putting up double-digit fantasy points regularly. So that makes them both in play. I know I was calling for the kickers in the morning's game, and they completely busted, both of them. Brandon McManus, Trevor Lawrence fumbling the ball twice in the red zone when our guy McManus was going to be kicking field goals was, having me ripping my hair out. But we'll move on from that. And the 49ers defense, they are interesting tonight because, Dallas Dak could turn in, like Dak just can turn the ball over. Like I don't think he's a very good quarterback. Like in general, we're kind of seeing that now that he gets placed with a mediocre play callers. But, Dak Prescott could turn the ball over pretty easily. San Francisco's D has been pretty underwhelming from a fantasy points perspective. But, as I was saying at the top, they're one of the better defenses in the league. Who have they played? They've played Arizona, the Giants, Los Angeles Rams, and Pittsburgh. So they haven't exactly played world beaters, but Arizona's been pretty good. But Arizona, Josh Dobbs actually had a really good game against Arizona last week, against San Francisco last week. And, that kind of sets up Dak Prescott a little bit to kind of, like sneak in here with a decent game tonight. Dallas's defense, I like Dallas's defense too. Brock Purdy, he hasn't had a whole bunch of games against, these top defenses. San Francisco's had kind of an easy schedule, for the past year and a half or however long Purdy's been the quarterback for. But Purdy is a good quarterback, and don't get me wrong on that. I think Purdy is the real deal. But I think he's going to have a difficult matchup tonight. And the last game against Dallas, he went 19 completions for 214 yards. He got sacked twice, no interceptions, but also no touchdowns. So, we could probably expect a low scoring game in this one tonight, but we'll get into that when we're building the lineups. Cowboys, Rico Dowdle, as I said at the top, he scored a touchdown. The scrubs on this offense that have scored the touchdowns, they've just been taking all the touchdowns. So it's difficult to rule out any of these Dallas scrubs because you never know, like if they're going to start getting the ball to the playmakers in the red zone, or if these nobodies are going to keep scoring all the touchdowns. But we got Elijah Mitchell out, by the way. Elijah Mitchell out is interesting for Jordan Mason, who is only 2,700 tonight, but he's got that difficult matchup against Dallas's defense. But, just somebody to keep on the radar tonight. He is only $2,700, but, it may just be a situation where it just doesn't get any work at all. We can see with Elijah Mitchell, he got 11 attempts in week 3, 5 attempts in week 1. So he's really wasn't, apart from that 11 attempt game, not getting too much work, despite even the Giants, San Francisco blowing out the Giants 30-12 and blowing out Pitt 30-7. He still wasn't getting attempts. Elijah Mitchell as the backup. So yeah, don't know what to make. I don't think we need to go that low as to start dumpster diving for San Francisco's backup running back in this matchup tonight. But that's something noteworthy, and if it fits your build, go for it. So, other than that, I'm not seeing a whole lot that I like. So Ronnie Bell might be interesting. Ronnie Bell, plays more of a role when guys are hurt. He only got 1 target last week, 2 targets the week before that. Those 2 targets against the Giants put him in the optimal lineup for Showdown with 10.4 points, but he only scored 10.4 points, and I think we can do better than that. So those are our guys. That's the rundown of these players, and now we can start building a chalky lineup. I think most people are going to go with Christian McCaffrey. In like tonight's builds, I think he's going to probably be the primary guy that people are going for. If we continue to build this lineup, maybe we put in. I think people are going to go with Purdy. I think it'll come down to Samuel or Ayuk. Let's put Samuel in there because I think, Samuel obviously is going to be cheaper. We're going to need to get a Dallas guy in here eventually. So we can try to plug in CeeDee Lamb and see what that does for us. It doesn't leave us with much salary. So we're going to probably need a cheap guy tonight to jam in all these other guys. maybe people lean towards Mason. Maybe people are putting in Mason tonight. So that leaves us with 35. That leaves you in a position you could put in the Cowboys D, but I don't think that really. Let's get rid of Lamb and see what that does for us. Who's the next good guy that we could get in here? Michael Gallup. Let's put Michael Gallup in there because he's got that good matchup. So maybe people will recognize that matchup. That leaves us with 5,300. With that much salary left, we could put in. Let's say we wanted to put in the kicker. Let's put in the kicker here. That leaves us with 6,300 salary. That leaves us in position where we could put in Cooks if we wanted to. We could put in Ferguson. That leaves you with options at least. And I think the matchups are accounted for. We got Christian McCaffrey, who's obviously a stud. We got Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel. Keep in mind that Trayvon Diggs is out with an ACL. He's out for the season, so we're not dealing with Trayvon Diggs tonight, and he was one of the best cornerbacks on Dallas. Dallas is still an explosive defense, but they're allowing explosive plays to offenses. Keep that in mind. And San Francisco's offense generates explosive plays at a high rate. So San Francisco has the ability to exploit this Dallas defense. So before we get into the next build, just keep that in mind that, like when we build a Dallas build, it is a less likely outcome that we're building. So I think it's an easy way to go different by building a Dallas build because all the optimizers are spitting out these San Francisco heavy builds. So the easiest way to get different and hope that Dallas's red zone luck turns tonight is to go Dallas heavy on this. So let's go with CeeDee Lamb in the captain on this build because CeeDee Lamb has that matchup against San Francisco's slot defense, who is pretty weak this year. We want to put in Christian McCaffrey because it's Christian McCaffrey. I think as far as maybe we fade quarterbacks altogether in this, and CeeDee Lamb is racking up those points in PPR. So let's take a look at a direction that we could go if we do that. Let's get Michael Gallup in here because I like Michael Gallup tonight. You know what? If I'm going to have two receivers, I'm putting Dak Prescott in. So we got Prescott throwing to Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. McCaffrey's doing all the damage on the other side. So this sounds like it's going to be either Dallas playing from behind or they're keeping it competitive. So we got Dallas heavy build, and then we can go with maybe a kicker. Like maybe we go with Moody because San Francisco isn't converting touchdowns, and instead, McCaffrey's getting them into scoring position, and he's failing to score, but then they're mopping it up with these field goals. So maybe McCaffrey, has a 50, 60-yard game, and then he scores a touchdown to keep that touchdown streak alive. So maybe he gets 12 to 14 fantasy points, and in a low-scoring game environment, it's enough to keep him in the optimal on the San Francisco side. And that leaves us 4,600 where we could go with a double kicker tonight. I wouldn't hate double kicker tonight. We could put in San Francisco's D. Not many people who would do a build like this would put San Francisco's D. Maybe we put in Dallas's defense because we know Dallas has explosive defense, and we've seen what they've done throughout the year. 27 points last week. Only one bad week, really, and that was against Arizona. They had 1 point. 15 points against New York Jets, and then 37 points against the Giants. So maybe the Cowboys are putting the Cowboys D is setting up the offense in good field position, and they're converting on passes to Gallup and Lamb. before Pollard has a chance to do any rushing or anything like that. I think that's an interesting build, you could go. Other than that, yeah, not really interested in any of those scrubs. So you could play around with a build like this. Maybe you fade McCaffrey. If you faded McCaffrey, maybe he just puts up 15 points, but it's a high scoring game, like because he gets that touchdown. So maybe we have Ayuk or Samuel in here, depending who your preference is. I think Dallas plays both the defenses that could benefit one or the other. So I think it's really a crapshoot on which one of these guys that you're going to pick. So if you wanted to pick Ayuk, that would leave you with $8K in salary. So you'd be able to put in like Samuel, Kittle, gives you like some good explosive options there. But yeah, and then we got like Ferguson. Would Ferguson work in that other build? Let's get rid of Ayuk and let's put back in McCaffrey. Yeah, no, we don't have enough money for Ferguson, but yeah, I mean, you can play around with it, see which direction it heads. But for the storyline of this game script here, under the assumption that Dallas gets its red zone woes together, I like CeeDee Lamb as a captain. Like with his matchup, he's probably going to be maybe my favorite captain option on the night, depending on like if I read any more nuggets on San Francisco's receivers before the lineup lock. It's mid-afternoon here on Sunday, so I haven't really had a chance to dig in, with my focus being on the London game and the main slate. But McCaffrey, like he's going for that streak of touchdowns, and then also just McCaffrey in general has capable of putting up enough points to easily end up in a flex position at the very least. Michael Gallup, he's got a good matchup tonight, and Michael Gallup is a guy that always seems to come through for Dak. And if they're going to break those red zone woes, like I could see Michael Gallup playing a role in that. Dak Prescott, if we're assuming that we got two wide receivers in here already, so we're kind of assuming that Dak Prescott is having a successful night. And then we got Moody in here, the San Francisco kicker, like in there, because these kickers are both scoring double-digit points. And this is two good defenses facing off against each other. And when two good defenses face off against each other, like they have a tendency to kick field goals as opposed to convert on touchdowns. Because we got two offenses that can also move the ball. So I would not hate putting two kickers in this build. I was putting, kickers in my lineups this morning. Didn't work out for me, but that doesn't mean anything as far as this game goes. So that's my breakdown pretty much of this game. I'm going to start building some lineups. And if I have any additional thoughts, I'll leave them in the comments section over on YouTube on this video. So good luck, everybody. And I'll see you tomorrow for Monday night.